Hey everyone, welcome to The Loop. The Loop is a podcast by Mosaic Church. In this episode, we are going to be discussing a brand new series that's kicking off this week called Living My Best Life. As always, I'm joined today by our senior pastor, Brandon Connor, and we are glad that you are along for the ride. So stick around. We've got a lot of great content coming your way.
You're listening to The Loop, a podcast by Mosaic Church. The goal? To know Jesus a little better, so we can live like him a little more. And now, here's today's host, Wes Feldner.
All right, welcome back to another full episode of The Loop. My name is Wes, and I am the creative arts pastor here at Mosaic, and I've got Brandon Connor here with us, our senior pastor here at the church. Brandon, how are you doing today, man?
Man, I'm great. I would say I am living my best life.
Okay, this is very appropriate because that is what the new series is called. But I want to ask, what does that even mean? I mean, I hear people say that all the time. So, tell me what that means.
Yeah, it's kind of one of these slang phrases. You probably have to look it up in Urban Dictionary in order to figure out what it means. Thankfully, I've got teenagers, so they keep me culturally relevant. You know, this phrase, living my best life, it's typically associated with some kind of Instagram post. Okay. And so people will post a picture of what's going on in their life, and then they'll, throw out the hashtag living my best life. And so you'll see all kinds of things. You'll see people who are, working out. You'll see people who are eating at their favorite restaurant. You'll see people who are on an incredible vacation. You'll see other people who have hiked to the top of a mountain and they're taking a selfie off the cliff, and, just all kinds of things. But I got to tell you, I was watching some TV last night, got home late, turned on the television, and I saw a commercial, and I heard this phrase being used in a place that I would have never thought of it being used before. Uh-oh. Any guesses on what it was?
I have no idea. It's going to be good, though.
It's going to be good. A local retirement community is now using this phrase. And so there's this B-roll footage of all these people who are sitting around, in their 80s playing board games and bunco and, whatever they do. And they're hanging out when their grandkids are coming to visit, and shuffleboard or whatever's happening over there. And they literally started the commercial by talking about living my best life. And I thought, man, it really is true. It doesn't matter how old you are.
There you go.
It may be one of those things that teenagers talk about, but you can be late in life and you can still be living your best life.
Your best life. So that's the next installment of our study of Ecclesiastes. So if you've missed any of those recent services, you can obviously catch those on demand on the Mosaic app, our website, YouTube, all of that stuff. And so we're still in the book of Ecclesiastes, right, for this one. So where does Solomon head in the text that motivated us to title this series Living My Best Life?
Yeah. As we all know, if you've been around Mosaic at least, you know that the whole book of Ecclesiastes is really Solomon writing as he kind of talks about his own personal experiences in life, and he talks about the observations that he's made about the ways other people are doing life.
Correct.
And so Solomon's saying, okay, this is how I do life, and this is the way everybody else is doing life. And then out of that, he's talking about these observations that he's made. And so what he's doing is he's coming into the final chapters of the book of Ecclesiastes, and he's landing the plane. And so much of the first 8 chapters is hey, this is how you've been doing life. This is how I've been doing life. It ain't working. But as he comes into the final few chapters, he's now going to point us in the right direction of how we should be approaching life. And so he's going to start giving us answers instead of talking about problems. And he's going to say, man, if you really want to be living your best life, here's some things that you need to be keeping in mind and keeping your mind focused on as you wake up every day and do life.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, and this book study has been awesome. So I've seen this hashtag, this catchphrase all over social media, Instagram, like you said. And when I look at the people that are sharing these photos and saying, hey, I'm living my best life, on one hand, I can see, okay, and it's funny because a lot of the pictures and stuff that I'm seeing are people with their pets, and it's living my best life. And I'm trying to figure out, are you living your best life, or is your pet living their best life? But, so there's a lot of like sweetness and cuteness or whatever in the posts or whatever, but like some of the posts and the photos and stuff that we're seeing that have this hashtag stamped on those posts are like, they're kind of sad. It's like, is that really your best life?
Yeah.
And so like, I kind of hurt for those people. So why do you think that so many people, especially like on social media or whatever, have all these different ideas of what it looks like to really be living their best life? Because I can look at that stuff and I say, man, if that's all there is, gosh, I'm so sorry for you.
It is. It's sad.
Yeah.
Like if that's as good as it gets, that's not a very good life.
Not at all.
And thankfully, Solomon's going to address that. You know, we've talked about chasing the rabbit. We've talked about chasing after things that really don't bring you satisfaction. They don't bring you any sense of purpose in life. They don't get to the heart of the real question. And so when you look at Ecclesiastes, it's important for us to remember before we start this study that Ecclesiastes is part of a greater section of the Bible that's called wisdom literature.
Right.
And so when you look at the wisdom literature section in the Bible, what you see that the authors of this section, they are attempting to answer some of the greatest questions that people have about life. They're dealing with kind of the big questions like, where did I come from? Where am I going when I breathe my last breath on this earth? And what is the meaning of life?
Yeah.
And really what you see here is you see that they're addressing what I might call worldview questions.
Right.
Like the way that you think about these big questions in life, they ultimately shape your worldview, and your worldview ultimately affects what you would say is your best life or what I would say is my best life. And so if God is not really part of my worldview, if I'm doing what Solomon talks about so often throughout the book, I'm focused only on that which is under the sun, then when I think about what is my best life, it may be something that's a little sad, like laying on the couch with my pet. It may be something that's a little sad that doesn't really seem to be this incredible life that we might think of when people are talking about living my best life.
Right.
And so I do think it's a worldview issue. I think if you take God out of the equation, if you're just living the great American dream, if you get caught up into kind of a selfish way of thinking, then your best life can be something that really may be sad.
Right.
But if we add God into the equation, if we start thinking about how our lives could make a difference, if we start thinking about the fact that everyone spends forever somewhere, then all of a sudden, the way in which I live my life becomes a completely bigger thing.
Yeah.
It adds meaning. It adds significance. There's greater degrees of purpose. And so it leads people, your worldview leads you into two totally different ways of thinking about what really is my best life.
Yeah. So living your best life with a Christian worldview might look completely different than living your best life with a secular worldview.
Absolutely. Like if you believe this is all there is, if you believe that only the strong survive, then you kind of go down this path in life where it's really easy for you to always look out for number one, to live a very self-centered life, to not think about other people, and you're just doing everything you can to gratify yourself. And I think most people instinctively know in their hearts that's really no way to live. And yet, if we just listen to our world, we forget about God, we focus only on that which is under the sun, it's easy for that worldview to drive us into a very selfish lifestyle where we celebrate living my best life, even though we're missing out on greater opportunities for our lives to show love to our neighbor, or for us to make a difference in the world, or for us to raise families, or for us to live on purpose with God, or to live in relationship with God and with other people in a way that adds a lot more value to life.
Yeah. And in today's day and age, it would probably be a lot easier for Christians to fall into that sort of idea of what it looks like to be living our best life. So talk to us as Christians, like, you know, with a Christian worldview, like what does it really look like for us to be living our best life and to make that change? Yeah.
Last night at our house, we had our community group. So we invited everybody over, and we decided that last night, we've been studying a book together and thinking about a lot of different passages of scripture, but we took a time out and we just said, hey, tonight for community group, we want to do something for other people. And so I took a bunch of boxes home from work, and we packed our Operation Christmas Child shoe boxes.
Oh, cool.
And we packed them full of stuff that we're going to be sending to kids for Christmas.
Yeah.
And as I sat there and I looked at all of us in the floor and all the, supplies and all the boxes that we were filling up, I thought, like, that really is what it looks like to be living my best life.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that a lot of us might look at a fancy dinner that we went to, or a little retreat or getaway that I had been on this week with some of our staff, or, somebody taking their boat out, or people going to the Peter Anderson Festival this weekend. They might look at that, and because it's fun for them, they kind of define that as, man, I'm living my best life.
Yeah.
But as followers of Jesus, I think living our best life looks really different. In fact, as I'm going into this series, I've been almost haunted by this question. Do Christians really look at Jesus and the way that he lived his life? And do we really think to ourselves, man, if I could just live like that, I would be living my best life? Because when we look at the way Jesus lived his life, he wasn't hanging out at the Peter Anderson Festival and playing and eating at elaborate restaurants. Like, so much of his life, yes, he had good moments and good times, but so much of his life included things like criticism because he was taking a stand for something. It included calling sinful people to leave a life of sin and enter into a relationship with God. It was a lot of time being spent on hurting people and lonely people in the world. He spent a lot of his time feeling lonely because he had been abandoned by those who were closest to him.
Yeah.
And the way he ends his life, he dies on a cross, fulfilling the purpose that God had for him when he sent him into the world. And I just really wonder, do Christians look at the way Jesus lived his life and say, Jesus is the leader of my life, and I want to live like him. And if I lived like him, then I would be living my best life. And I don't think we're there. I think a lot of us, myself included, we have other ideas that are almost the antithesis of what we see in Jesus.
Yeah.
And those ideas lead us to go, man, like, this would be living my best life. And yet it's radically different.
Totally different.
Totally different.
Can you imagine scrolling through Instagram and Jesus has an Instagram and he's posting something?
Wow.
And it says hashtag living my best life. Like, is that a post that you would sit there and you would go, yeah, that's it?
Most of us would probably go scratch our head. What? Like, come on, Jesus, you got to be
right
better than that
one.
And yet Jesus, man, he just knew. Like if you think about what Solomon's going after in this book, and he's going, man, what is the meaning of life?
Yeah.
Jesus knew.
Right.
And so Jesus was living out his God-given purpose. He was maintaining relationship with his heavenly Father and with other people. He was fulfilling his God-given purpose in the world, even though it was hard, it was unpleasant at times, not always fun. And yes, he had a lot of fun days. He went to parties, he hung out with friends, they ate great meals together, they laughed together, they cried together. But there was a lot about his life that was just hard.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us probably shy away from that, and we want to go kind of the way of the world and the way of the culture, and we really do. I think when we do that, we miss out on what God would say, man, you just missed out on your best life.
Yeah. So that leads me to the next question then. For folks that maybe don't have a Christian worldview, maybe they're pre-believers, maybe they're just, kind of exploring faith or whatever, why would a series like Living My Best Life be important for them as well?
Yeah. So I think it goes back to the worldview issue. I think most people who are not Christians, they're operating in life on a worldview that really excludes God. It excludes Jesus and all the teachings and the examples of Jesus in the Bible. And so what they're doing is they're going through life and they're living out of that worldview. And my question is, what if your worldview was wrong? And so last weekend, I was in a message last week of the Wise Up series. And in that message, I use a quote from Lemony Snicket where he was talking about assumptions. And he said, assumptions are a dangerous thing to make. Like bombs, when we make bombs, even if we make the tiniest mistake, we find ourselves in terrible trouble. And my concern for people who are not followers of Jesus is that they're operating out of a worldview. And my question is, man, if you've made even the tiniest mistake, in the way that you were thinking about this world, in the way that you were thinking about the big questions of life, if you've made even the tiniest mistake, you will find yourself in terrible trouble. And so for people who are not even Christians, I would say that it would be well worth 4 or 5 hours of your life to come and to listen to a series of messages about what life is really all about. And in doing so, you may find a new way to do life where you're saying, man, now I'm living my best life. Right. And I want that for you. I think God wants that for you.
So it sounds like this would be a great series to invite our friends, family members, coworkers, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Even if they're Christians or not.
Yep, absolutely. It's one of those series. It's going to be fun, but it's also going to challenge people to think. Yeah. And so that's what we want. We want people to think about the greater questions of life so that they can make the most of their life, so they can be living their best life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you guys heard it right here. You're not going to want to miss the new series, Living Our Best Life, or Living My Best Life. And don't come alone. Yep. Remember, bring your family members, coworkers, friends, neighbors to sit with you in church this week. It sounds like it's going to have a lot to say to each and every one of us, whether we have a Christian worldview or maybe we're just exploring faith or wanting to learn more about Jesus. So remember that what you're hearing on today's episode is just a taste of what we're going to be discussing as we wrap up our study of the book of Ecclesiastes. There's too many consonants in this script here. But Brandon, any final thoughts or recommended readings or anything that we could do before we come and experience the Living Your Best Life series?
Yeah, as I've said so many times in our study of Ecclesiastes, I want young people to come to this series.
Yeah.
I think young people are in a place in their life where they're impressionable.
Yeah.
I think a lot of young people are asking the big questions of life. They haven't already settled into a certain way of life.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, okay, like, what should my life really look like? What is it supposed to be about? And so for everybody who's in their teens, they're in their 20s, and they're still forming their worldview, they're still thinking about the great questions of life, they're still trying to figure out, what do I want my life to look like? I so want you to be here for this series, because I know what our world tells us, and I know what Solomon tells us. And Solomon was the wisest mortal man who ever lived. And there's some wisdom on the pages of that book that we all need to hear. And so young people, please come out. Yeah. You're probably the only ones who are listening to a podcast. And so it's my plea to say, come on, join us for this series. It's going to be a fun series, but it's one that I really think can set you up to win for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, young people, make sure that you're here, young and old alike. I mean, it's going to be a great series for each and every one of us. So Living My Best Life starts this weekend. So we'll see you Thursday at 7 or Sunday at 9:30 and 11. And remember, do not come alone. Bring family members, coworkers, friends, neighbors, anybody. Tell them to come sit with you. If you've got somebody in mind already that you want to invite to church, man, share this episode with them. Send it their way and say, hey, here's a little convo about what's coming up at church this weekend. I would love for you to come and sit with me, and we can learn about this together and hear how we can make a change and make a shift in our life. So we love and appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thanks so much for taking time out of your day to listen to this episode. We will see you this week for our new series, Living My Best Life. See you later.
You've been listening to The Loop, a podcast by Mosaic Church. For more information, visit us online at MosaicGC.com.